Moving on to the top 10. The actual top 10, not this BS six spot top 10. Joe Mixon.
Yeah, Mixon's with the new team this year in the Texans. I don't think that's going to matter. This guy has been a model of consistency, especially in fantasy over the years. There was one year where he was out, like 10 games or whatever, but otherwise, he's only missed couple games, each year. Last year, he played all year. He's definitely always been active in the passing game. That might be the only thing I would say that could dip for him this year, is how much he gets in the passing game. But I still think he's still gonna be in that 40-50 reception
Mm-hmm.
range. I think that he uh, again, I think he's gonna be. I probably had him ranked a little low. He should have been in my top, at least in my top 10. Um, this year. So do I think he's gonna be six like he was last year? I don't know. He could. I just I think he might take a little bit of a dip. I definitely think he's gonna be in the top 10 though, for sure. RB1 all the way. He's a model of consistency. He's probably one of the most underrated running backs in fantasy football for sure. Everybody shies away from him, but he comes out week in and week out and puts up points. That's what he does. He had 9 receiving or rushing touchdowns and 3 receiving touchdowns, so he had 12 touchdowns last year. He still had over 1,000 yards in the rushing game, in 52 receptions. I mean, yeah, he's just a model of consistency, and he definitely is should be in the top 10 for sure.
Oh, I definitely see him being top 10 too. I think him joining the Texans is going to be just as good, if not better, than being on the Bengals because the man's going to be open on like the majority of passing like routes for his team. You got Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins really just freeing up a ton of the field, so they could set Mixon up for a lot of success this year, get him the ball quite a bit. I could even see his receiving touchdowns going up because you never know with Stroud. You could see him throw for over 40 touchdowns this year, and Mixon could be that third guy getting a ton of touchdowns with Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. So,
I mean, the only thing that worries me about him is I know D'Amico Ryans has come out, the head coach, and said that he sees Mixon and Pierce both having a huge role in the offense. So that's the only question mark that I would have. I still don't think it's going to knock him out of the top 10. But I have heard that Pierce is having a great training camp, and I know DeMarco Ryans is really high on him as well. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But I still think he's gonna have a great year in fantasy.
Rachaad White.
I like Rachaad White. I really do. I think that the only knock on White is his yards per carry. He doesn't tend to have um, a big yards per carry. Last year, 3.64. Uh, he's really active in the passing game. He had 64 receptions. He did have 6 touchdowns rushing, 3 receiving. I do like him. I do like him. Don't take this as a negative. I do think that Bucky Irving coming in for Tampa Bay could have a little bit of impact on Rachaad White. I don't think Rachaad White's going to be able to live on 272 attempts every year. That's going to take a toll on his body, especially when he's only gaining 3.64 yards a carry. So he didn't hit over. I mean, listen, he had 272 attempts last year, and he only had 990 yards in the rushing game.
You got to be at like 12 or 13
So
with that.
I think the saving grace last year for Rachaad White was the fact that he had 64 receptions and almost 600 yards receiving. So that was a huge thing for him. So, again, that puts him, comparable. I'm not saying he's a CMC type running back and that. But I'm saying from a rushing, receiving balance, he's like a CMC Kamara type running back in that sense. So you really need to make he really needs to be an active part of their passing game in order for him to have a huge impact from a fantasy perspective. So I still think that he's going to be in the top 10. I might have ranked, might have ranked Mixon above him, but I think that they're really close. Like I said, I think I probably should have had Mixon in the top 10. But at any rate, uh, uh, I do think he's going to have another really good year. He hasn't shown any history of getting hurt, which is good. I do think Bucky Irving has the potential to maybe take some of those attempts off of his carry, off of his plate and stuff. I would like to see his yards per carry go up, though. He needs to get over 4 yards a carry. If he's going to continue to be a successful running back in fantasy football, because otherwise he's going to take a beating and his body's going to catch up to him. So
yeah, I think going into this year, he's probably going to be sitting at around 200 attempts, and I think he's got it in him this year to be around 4.5 yards per carry. So I see him being over or just about the same amount here to 1,000. And then like obviously his receiving is not going to go away. I mean, it's almost 550 yards there and 64 receptions from a running back is nuts. That's more than some receivers out there right now. So that's always a nice little upside, especially in PPR. If he's getting 64 receptions on 70 targets, so only 6 of them are missed, like the dude's going to set you up for success. And you look at even the year prior, he only had 8 targets that missed him. So in 2 years, he's caught the ball 114 times and been targeted 128 there. So like he's only missed like 14 balls in 2 years.
He's a really good receiving back, and and that's how I think how they compensate for his yards per carry on rushing is through the passing game. So I still think he's a top 10. He's definitely an RB1 for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Pretty simple one. Moving on. We got number 8 here, which is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, we kind of touched on Gibbs before. I like Gibbs. I think he's going to have a much more active role this year in the offense. I think I think like I said earlier with Montgomery, I think it's going to kind of flip flop. You're going to slowly see Gibbs get a little bit more attempts than Montgomery. He's definitely going to be more active in the passing game. I definitely think that he's probably going to be right around that 10 to 12 TDs again. So I think he's definitely a top 10 running back. And again, like we said with Montgomery, I think that this year he's going to be even better. I think he breaks the 1,000-yard rushing this year too as well. So I think he's going to have a really good year, and I expect great things from him.
Yeah, and we touched on him earlier, so we don't really have to cover a whole lot. And like you said, Gibbs is going to have probably over 1,000 yards. I can agree with that. He did get the ball quite a bit more towards the end of the season compared to his first half of the season. So,
which is a good sign because if he's getting more of the ball more at the end of the season, that means the Lions are probably going to continue that trend at the beginning of this year.
And if they do that, you never know. Certain things could happen. I can maybe see Montgomery getting traded at some point if Gibbs is playing really well.
No, it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to.
And if that happened, his value even goes up higher.
Yeah.
So like, you never know. Travis Etienne.
Yeah, Etienne. I know Wiggs had him a little bit higher than me. I definitely think he's going to be a top 10 running back. I think that I know that there's talk that Bigsby might get a little bit more involved in the offense this year for Jacksonville. I still think Etienne's going to be their guy. He's active in the passing game. He had 58 receptions. What was it? 58 receptions last year. He had 11 rushing touchdowns. I think he's going to have a similar type year. I think he's going to be, you know, right around there. I just had him ranked a little bit lower because I think that there's some other guys that are going to probably have a little bit bigger season than he does this year. Um, that's not a knock on Etienne. I just think that's just the reality. Um, so yeah, I mean, and his 2022 he had 17. He missed his first year. 2022 he had 17 games. He had 1,100 yards, 1,125 yards rushing. Last year he was just over 1,000 yards rushing. The one thing again, I said this about um, White is I'd like to see his yards per carry go up. He had 267 attempts, and he only had 3.78 yards a carry. Yeah. So that's the big knock on Etienne. He makes it up in the passing game because he had over 50 receptions. Yep. So, but he's definitely an RB1 for sure, top 10 for sure.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said too, and he definitely needs to get his yards per carry back up again this year, even if it's just up above 4. I think anything under 4 for a running back in fantasy football at least is really just not RB1 potential most of the time, unless they're picking it up in the touchdowns, which he did. I would like to see a little more receiving touchdowns, which I think this year he's set up to get just as many receptions, if not more, and more receiving touchdowns with them losing Calvin Ridley. So,
yeah, I do think he might be a little bit more active in the passing game. I'm not sold on who they brought in for their receivers. I've never been a huge Christian Kirk fan. I do like their tight end in Ingram. I do think Brian Thomas has potential as a rookie, but rookies tend to struggle. Yep. So,
Gabe Davis won't be bad for him.
So Gabe will be okay, but I'm just not sold on the receiver. Yeah. So I could see an uptick in his involvement.
Well, and you look at the backup running backs too. It's not like they utilized Bigsby or D'Ernest Johnson last year as much as I thought they should. Me personally, I'd be looking at D'Ernest Johnson over Bigsby, but that's just me. I think Johnson's got a lot to bring to the table and could help, but again, I'm not the coach. I don't make decisions there, so.
Yeah.
Isiah Pacheco.
Yeah, we were pretty close on this one. I like Pacheco. I think he had a great year last year. He just missed 1,000 yards. He was rushing for 4.56 yards a carry. He had 7 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, 44 receptions. I think this year he's going to have even more. I really do. I think at the beginning of the year, especially because they're going to be without Rice. Yes, they brought in Hollywood Brown. Yes, they've got a couple other rookie receivers that they have as well. One of them, I think, is got a little knocked up here in camp. They do have Travis Kelce, but I think Pacheco showed last year that he could, that he's definitely an RB1. I think the only knock against the guy is the way he runs. I mean, the guy's a beast, but obviously that can impact. He runs so hard that sometimes it looks like he's a little bit out of control. Yeah. He did miss 3 games last year, so I'd love to see him be out on the field for 17. So if he didn't miss those 3 games, he most likely would have had over 1,000 yards. So I do think he's going to get over 1,000 this year for sure, as long as he stays healthy. I think he'll be right around the same in the passing game. Maybe a little uptick there, like I said in the beginning of the year. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's between 50 and 60 receptions this year, around maybe around 350 yards. So I think he'll still be around a combined 10 touchdowns between rushing and receiving. So I definitely wouldn't surprise me if he makes it into the top 5. All depends. You just never know. So he has the potential to do that. But I think having him at number 6 is probably a good spot for him.
Yeah, it's not a bad spot at all. And I definitely could see him being anywhere from 14 to 1,500 combined yards next year, especially with Rice, however long he'll be suspended for. He will definitely see an uptick in receptions because he's really one of the top receivers there at that point as a running back. And I could see him getting like 60 plus receptions there with another 100, 150 yards. So
Yeah, and I don't think I don't think Andy Reid has confidence in anybody behind him at running back right now. I think who's his backup,
yeah,
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think that I just don't.
they don't
see.
have depth.
I don't. You know that. You know I don't see. I don't see them really leaning on a lot of the other running backs either. So
This is a team